All right, 6.9 miles, 8:17 per mile. Whew. I wasn't sure if I was even gonna make it out today. I woke up feeling exhausted. The miles are adding up. Today, I want to talk to you guys about what I do for injury prevention and how I keep going every day. So ultimately, there's not a whole lot that I do that's special, or I don't have any tricks in terms of avoiding injury. I usually don't really stretch even before or after my runs. There's really only two things that I do. One is if I'm feeling soreness, I might do a little bit of stretching, just some range of motion kind of things, or I might get the foam roller out. On extremely high mileage months, and usually it takes a couple of weeks of high mileage in a row for this to happen, is sometimes my left hip, it will feel like the tendons or muscles that are keeping the hip in the socket start to feel a little bit loose, and so my hip joint feels a little bit weird. So sometimes a little bit of range of motion, just some stretching will get that sorted out. And then in my legs, in my calves, if they're feeling a little bit tight, I might get the foam roller out, or if I don't have the foam roller, I might just get a knuckle and kind of dig in there a little bit. Yesterday I went to my nephew's baseball game, and while we were there, I was using one of the bleachers below me as kind of a hard point to press into my calf. And I was just kind of doing some self-massage in that regard. So those are like one of the little things that I do if I'm starting to feel like things might be getting a little bit towards the overuse injury kind of area. The other thing that I do is I change my shoes really frequently. Now I change my shoes more frequently now that I've started reviewing kind of more shoes. But even last year, when all I ran in was the Pegasus 34, I think I ran in 4 or 5 different pairs of them over the year. I think it was 4. I usually switch them out at 270 miles. I know every time I do that, I know a lot of people will talk to me and cite some sort of conspiracy to get people to change shoes more frequently. I don't really know where a lot of those comments are coming from. I don't think that shoes are supposed to really last for, like, some people, I know they're getting 500 miles. If you are, that's amazing. I'm never gonna get that many miles out of my shoe. I can feel the difference in the shoe. A lot of times the outsole rubber is worn down. And that's one reason that I'll change a shoe, although that's a really almost a very late indicator that you need to change your shoe, because the cushioning, the foam that's in the midsole, that's what's really protecting you, that stuff can start to lose its resilience and its performance capabilities, I think, much sooner than the rubber on the outsole will wear out. Although there's some shoes like the Ultra Boost Parley where the outsole design makes me wonder that the rubber is going to go first. But I'll change my shoes relatively frequently, and usually the thing for me is once I hit about 250 miles, I'll start listening to my body, and if I'm starting to feel like a little bit of a pain in my right heel, that's usually where things kind of happen for me. That will be my signal that maybe this shoe needs to be replaced. And here's the way I think of it. Yes, I probably could eke out another 25, 50, maybe even another 100 miles on a shoe, but on the other hand, I could keep running on the shoe and end up with like a microfracture or stress fracture in my ankle, and that could put me out of commission for a couple of weeks. And for me, like, erring on the side of caution, that has worked out really, really well for me, and that is, I think, is one of the things that has been able to keep me going. It does mean that I end up buying a lot more shoes, but in the over-under, running is a relatively cheap sport. You're not buying golf clubs. You're not paying for a gym membership to go play basketball somewhere. You're not paying for ice hockey skates, gloves, sticks, pads, things like that. So there's a lot of other things that I could be doing that are a lot more expensive. So in the over-under, it's about my health. It's about being able to continue running. So I don't mind leaving a couple miles in the shoes when I retire them. And so that's kind of been my philosophy. And maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just me being superstitious. But since I started doing that, I have felt like I've been more in tune to my body because I'm listening more. But also I've been able to avoid some of the more other nagging injuries. I mean, there's some other things that I do too. Like for example, UFO sent me these sandals last year as I was preparing for the Chicago Marathon. And these sandals feel fantastic. I usually put them on after every run. Well, not in the winter, but when the weather is appropriate. And I'll take the dog for a walk in these flip-flops. They're super soft and cushy. My wife likes them so much. She got her own pair that she likes to, do those kinds of things in, just because they are so comfortable. And that's pretty much it. I think though that the other kind of part of this equation though is lifetime miles, and that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. Especially after I didn't perform as well as I was hoping to at the Chicago Marathon last September. And I think lifetime miles is really important, not just to be able to have endurance to run a race like a marathon. Lifetime mileage is important, but I also think whenever you're trying to increase your mileage or increase your times and just trying to avoid injury, I think lifetime mileage is a really important thing. You got to have that base to be able to run 40 miles a week. And if you want to go from 40 to 50, lifetime mileage is going to help you get there without getting injured or reducing your risk of injury. There's nothing that's going to eliminate your risk of injury. The only thing that will eliminate your risk of injury is to not run. But we're talking about reducing the risk of injury. I think having lifetime mileage is important. And so I've never been one to follow a plan. I followed plans before, and I'll generally, as I'm training for a bigger race, look at a plan for some sort of guidance. But I'm not like an extremely regimented runner, and maybe that also is causing me to leave a couple of minutes, on the table in terms of how much faster I could be getting. I know I should be doing more track workouts, but I don't do anything like plyos. I don't do any kind of wind sprints. I don't do anything fancy with bungee cords and weights and parachutes, anything like that. Maybe I could eke out the next little bit of level of performance, or maybe even a lot of performance from that. But I also think that if you're going to be training like that, then your recovery regimen has to be much more or just as specifically tailored to your body's needs. And right now, I don't have the time for that kind of training and recovery, and I don't really have the knowledge for that. What suits me and my lifestyle in terms of work-life running balance and all the other things that I have to kind of fit in my day is to think more generally about weekly mileage as my goal, rather than hitting specific times and tempos in a tempo run, hitting specific splits in a track workout. I'm worried more about monthly mileage than I am worried about how many plates I'm lifting at the gym. In fact, I try never to go to the gym at all anymore. And so that's just generally how I do it. I know there are lots of differing opinions on it, and I'm probably in the minority, but a couple of people have been asking about how I avoid injury and how I can keep running. I'm not a huge run streaker. I'll usually try to string about like 10 to 14 days in a row. I try to run every day. Life gets in the way. Every once in a while I have to take a day, sometimes 2 days off in a week. But usually I'm running about 10 days in a row at a time, and then I'll get a rest day in there, not usually because I want to, but because I have to. But sometimes I'll put in a rest day just because I feel like my body needs me to back off a little bit, just so that way I can recover, give myself a little bit of recovery time before I get back at it again. And so slow and steady, I guess, to use a marathon metaphor. when talking about marathon training is, you got to be in it for the long run. I've realized now that marathon training isn't about training blocks. It isn't about a Hal Higdon plan. Marathon training is about years. It takes years, and it takes much more patience than probably I would have, that I want for it to take. And it takes a lot more patience than I ever thought it would. But I think it does. And the only way you can do it, in my mind and for my body, is to get out there and try to do it every day. And the only way that I can do that is by listening to my body and keeping the training relatively straightforward and keeping the recovery relatively straightforward. But if you've got something that's completely different, let me know in the comments what's working for you. If you've got something that's similar, I'd love to hear about that too. I know there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and I'm always open to new ideas. So I'd love to hear what you guys are doing.
Yo, what's going on?